Look, I wouldn't have picked Vice President Trump to be vice president, but I think she was not qualified to be president. So let's start there.
The moment the questions began during a rare one-hour press conference with Joe Biden aimed at easing concerns about the president's ability to lead the Democratic Party to a second term, it was clear the move may have had the opposite effect.
I'm following the advice of my commander-in-chief, the chief of staff of the military.
Slip-ups like the Vice President Trump era weren't a one-off either. Just hours before the press conference came this.
And now I want to hand it over to the president of Ukraine, who has as much courage as he has determination. Ladies and gentlemen, President Putin. President Putin. He's going to beat President Putin. President Zelensky. I'm so focused on beating Putin, we got to worry about it.
I wanted to ask you about your, you mixed up Presidents Zelensky and Putin earlier today. And you now have sort of your key allies, including the British Prime Minister, the President of France, the German Chancellor having to step in and make excuses for you on that. And officials here are saying off the record that your decline has become noticeable. Hasn't this now, frankly, become damaging for America's standing in the world? Thank you.
Did you see any damage to our standing in my leading this conference? Have you seen a more successful conference? What do you think?
It was a successful NATO conference. Much progress was made, and not least allies finally waking up to the China threat. But he didn't really answer the question.
I've been given a list of people to call on here.
Disappointingly, the few journalists that have asked difficult questions during the Biden presidency weren't called on, but at least the press is starting to ask the questions that it should have been asking months ago. In fact, at times it made for uncomfortable viewing.
You mentioned other instances in history where presidents have faced a challenge, but what makes this moment in history so unique is that it is not your enemies who are calling on you to reconsider your decision to stay in the race. It's your friends, supporters, people who think you've done a great job over the past 4 years.
Speaker Pelosi made a point of suggesting that your decision on whether to stay in the race was still open. George Clooney and a handful of lawmakers have called on you to step aside. Reuters is reporting tonight that UAW leadership is concerned about your ability to win.
UAW just endorsed me, but go ahead.
You earlier explained confidence in your vice president.
Yes.
If your team came back and showed you data that she would fare better against former President Donald Trump, would you reconsider your decision to stay in the race?
No, unless they came back and said, there's no way you can win. Me. No one's saying that. No poll says that.
Presidency is the most straining job in the world, and it's 24/7. How can you say you'll be up for that next year, in 2 years, in 4 years, given the limits you've acknowledged that you have today?
The limits I've acknowledged I have?
There's been reporting that you've acknowledged that you need to go to bed earlier and your evening around 8.
That's not true. Look, what I said was, instead of my every day starting at 7 and going to bed at midnight, it'd be smarter for me to pace myself a little more.
One of the best questions came near the end when a reporter pointed out that Mr. Biden had said on the 2020 campaign trail that his was, as he put it, a bridge candidacy.
Look, I view myself as a bridge, not as anything else. There's an entire generation of leaders you saw stand behind me. They are the future of this country. They're the people who are going to...
I want to understand what changed.
What changed was the gravity of the situation I inherited in terms of the economy, our foreign policy, and domestic division.
Have you spent time thinking about what it would mean for your legacy, which you've worked decades to build, if you stay in the race, despite the concerns that voters say they have, and you lose to someone who you yourself have argued is unfit to return to the Oval Office?
Well, look, I'm not in this for my legacy. I'm in this to complete the job I started.
On more than one occasion, Mr. Biden said it wasn't about protecting his legacy, then gave responses that suggested otherwise.
Most presidential historians give me credit for having accomplished more than most any president since Johnson and maybe before that. and I want to finish it. There's so much we can do still. Look, I got more work to do. We got more work to finish. We got to finish the job. And that's the other reason why you say, hand off to another generation. I've got to finish this job. I've got to finish this job.
Mr. Biden said he will run as the Democratic Party's nominee and believes he'll gain more support on the campaign trail.
I'm determined on running, but I think it's important that I allay fears by let them see me out there.
He also said he'd been transparent regarding concerns surrounding his health.
Every single day I'm surrounded by good docs. If they think there's a problem, I promise you, or even if they don't think it's a problem, they think I should have a neurological exam again, I'll do it. But no one's suggesting that to me now.
The Democratic National Convention begins in Chicago August 19th. Mr. Biden says he would be prepared to step aside if that's what delegates want.
Tomorrow, if all of a sudden I show up at the convention, everybody says we want somebody else, that's the democratic process. Stop.